What's up, Hoosier Nation? Welcome back to tonight's episode of the Rock Report Week 2. Indiana's facing off Kennesaw State. Hopefully, everyone tuned in to our interview this past Sunday that was released on Monday with Dexter Williams, quarterback for Kennesaw State, and former Indiana Hoosiers. Little kind of opening of the game this Saturday, 12 p.m. noon at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington. The game will be on Fox Sports 1. Indiana is 1-0 to start the season, coming off on a win versus Old Dominion. Sean, take it away.
All right, starting off here with the offense, getting into some stats from last week as well as some key matchups. First, starting off with Fernando Mendoza, quarterback for the Hoosiers, 58.1% completion rate last week for 193 yards and 0 interceptions. This was a game that we really had the Hoosiers, total air raid taking advantage of the ODU defense. Obviously, that did not happen as we predicted. Going into this week, I would expect Indiana's offense to essentially work deeper into that pass game. Last week, I think, just dipping our toes in the water a little bit. Running backs last week did an incredible job. Roman Hemby, the transfer coming in this year, rushed for 111 yards, 4.8 yards per carry. And then Kalen Black, the guy that last year got some carries, but now is essentially in that starting role, rotating in there with Hemby, 92 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 5.4 yards per carry. Ricky, get into the defense here a little bit.
And one thing we knew, especially going into that Old Dominion game, is that Old Dominion quarterback was a dual threat. One thing we're going to see, Kennesaw State is also going to have dual threat with Dexter Williams. The defense didn't do the best job. There were a couple missed assignments there. But Isaiah Jones had one tackle for loss. Great sack by him. Kind of a great showing. Isaiah Jones really stepping up. Aiden Fisher is always a dog, but we have another linebacker and Isaiah Jones stepping up, making some plays. Big thing that happened was they really kind of took care of the pass game. There was not many yards in the air by Old Dominion. Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell, Angelo Pons, each had interceptions, had a couple of PBUs. Great game all around from the secondary. Really, really looking forward to this week shutting down that offense. I really need to stop the run, but we knew Old Dominion was big on the run game. Obviously, the 275-yard plus runs. But Sean, talk a little bit about Dexter Williams and the Kennesaw State offense.
Yeah, a couple notes real quick before I get into that. We talked about Lewis Moore having a great game last week. Given his current status with his NCAA lawsuit, this is the last week he is eligible to play football at Indiana University for the time being. So one to watch. Hopefully next week we'll get a better answer on kind of what's going on with him there. Getting into the Kennesaw State offense, quarterback Dexter Williams, who we interviewed on Sunday, former Indiana Hoosier. He's a dual threat guy, right? Got a pretty solid arm. He will attack you in the air, but also very fast, can scramble. I think this is a week where the keys are really for Isaiah Jones and Aiden Fisher. You've got to keep him in the pocket. If he scrambles, he can tear apart a defense pretty quickly. Not a great game out of him last week. They did take Wake Forest down to the wire, 12 for 33, 149 passing yards, but he also rushed for 44 yards. That just goes to show you give him some space, he's going to attack you. They've also got a good running back in Coleman Bennett, rushed 17 times for 66 yards and a touchdown last week. And then wide receiver Gabe Benyard. This is who Dexter mentioned in his interview on Sunday. 5 receptions, 103 yards. This is a guy I would expect Dex to target pretty often on Saturday.
Definitely. We kind of, Indiana offense struggled a little bit in the red zone, especially up front, a couple missed assignments there. They're going to have a big challenge up front, especially Donovan Westmoreland and Roderick Daniels, two big guys up front for Kennesaw State. Definitely a matchup to look for between those guys. In the middle, I don't think, what happened in that game going down to the goal line, especially getting inside the 10, especially this is a better defense for sure. Kennesaw State's defense, a little better, a little bigger. They're going to have to be able to finish those drives and capitalize. Uh, Team leader in tackles, 11 tackles, is linebacker Baron Hobson. Um, Great player for Kennesaw State, really kind of helps that defense up in the middle, kind of directs everything, the whole defense. He's got that green sticker on his helmet. The stuff all plays through him. My biggest matchup, Sean, moving off from Kennesaw's offense, Dexter Williams and Fernando Mendoza. This is a homecoming for Dexter Williams. Um, Obviously, we spoke to him, kind of touch base on that matchup.
Yeah, definitely going to be a great quarterback game. Both guys struggled a little bit last week. So I would expect both teams to try to establish the run game and the pass game pretty heavily. get going into conference play, get things rolling the way they wanted to. The big thing getting into the ground game, Kennesaw State last week limited Wake Forest to 2.8 yards per carry. It'll really be on Hemby and Black this week to exploit that Kennesaw State defense. Interview from Pat Coogan this week, the Indiana center transfer from Notre Dame. They were not very happy with their performance. I didn't think that the offensive line performed that well last week. They're really looking to take a step forward this week, took responsibility for what happened last week, and essentially are trying to establish themselves as a pass and run offense.
Yeah, and Dexter Williams, he went 12 for 33 in the air. It's 33 times throwing the ball. That is, that's a lot for most offenses, especially when you're not having that much success. They believe in Dexter Williams to throw the ball. Another battle to look is our secondary, as we talked about, Pons, Farrell, and Moore, kind of those three DBs, those three guys in the secondary. Jamari Sharp, another great name to mention. Really looking forward to that matchup. You know, IU had the ball for 41 minutes last game. They kind of held on to the ball. They won the turnover battle. But that's a big thing. Can IU again, cause takeaways? Can they force fumbles? Can they get the ball out of Dexter Williams' hands and give our offense more chances?
Some defensive depth issues already this season early on here for IU. Indiana rotating safety Bryson Bonds and key special teams player had a season-ending knee injury last week. Got tripped up on a special teams play and is now out for the season. Byron Baldwin, a guy that had high ratings in all the 24/7 and Rivals recruiting rankings, supposed to step up this week. Excited to see him. Ricky, get into the coaching insights from this game a little bit.
Yeah, head coach for Kennesaw State, Jerry Mack. They had a really close one versus Wake Forest. He's kind of constantly been praising Indiana for their dynamic offense, emphasizing that very disciplined and sound on the technique. You could definitely see what happened in that Old Dominion game. IU was very sound. That's how you get to 500 plus yards on the ground. That's how you hold the ball for 45 or 41 minutes for that whole game. Kind of really, Kennesaw State's obviously not taking this matchup lightly, but at the same time, Kurt Signetti is not happy. He's not happy with the performance out of Indiana Hoosiers last week. He is a guy who, even last year, it was pretty hard to see a smile on his face on the sidelines. And he's a guy who is not going to stop and he's not going to quit. He's not going to become complacent. And one thing he's going to make sure is that team isn't complacent. So I'm sure he's in the locker room constantly yelling, constantly talking about how if they play the way they did last year, they're not going to win a game for the rest of the season. And he's going to get everyone to bring their best effort.
Yeah, I mean, I really expect to see Indiana take a step forward this week. I think last week was pretty much unacceptable across all standards. When we talk about creating, the upcoming powerhouse in college football, creating a college football playoff team, college football playoff teams do not win against a G5 opponent by 14 points, right? There are some massive strides this Indiana team needs to make over the next few weeks before conference play. That first conference game against Illinois is not a small game by any means. Illinois is, a top 25 football team this year that is probably going to be a top 25 matchup given whatever happens the next 2 weeks. Very, very talented football team. I would expect Kurt Signetti to try and establish a more powerful offensive drive this week and get the defenders to essentially tackle a little bit better. Looking at the PFF rankings last week, Aiden Fisher and Isaiah Jones both had a 25% plus miss rate in tackling. A lot of our fans blame that on the lack of scrimmages in the preseason. Whatever the issue may be, it's got to get fixed here before conference play.
Yeah. And then obviously looking at the game predictions and analysis as we do every week, Sean, just analysis of the game based off the Vegas books, Indiana. They opened as a 34.5 point favorite. I believe that line is now up to 35.5. This is a team, the way they played last week, they left a lot of points on the board. So there's a lot to look forward to. The over under this game is currently sitting at 53.5 points. Um, what we know is IE needs to set the tone early. They did start pretty slow last game. They did get that one touchdown on special teams to bring it even, but they left way too many points on the board. And if they play the same way, driving up and down the field, 500 plus yards, they should definitely score a lot of points this game.
100%. I think my prediction this week is going to be in the 38-14 range. I think the only contingency here really becomes if Indiana does not execute in the red zone the same way they did not execute last week. This is a football team that will take advantage of that a lot more than Old Dominion did. We saw them take Wake Forest down to the wire last week. Their defense is pretty solid. They can run the football. This is not a football team that you can make as many mistakes as we did last week against. Need to establish the run game, need to get the pass game going in some fashion, and find a little bit of rhythm, score in the red zone, and from there, this game will be taken away.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap little things up, kind of give people a little something to think about. This is Dexter Williams' homecoming. He is going to give it his all. Does he have what it takes to kind of lead that locker room, lead them to a victory, leaving Bloomington?
Yeah, I mean, I would really expect Dex to come swinging, right? I expect him to try to make a splash. Indiana essentially did not want to keep him around after he got hurt playing at Indiana. He had a great couple of games. I expect him to come out swinging. I expect him to, perform at his best. I really, really, really am excited to see him in the run game. I think this is a guy that just across college football is a lot more dynamic of a player than people give him credit. This very, very well could be a good football game. I think if Indiana can execute, by no means does this one stay close, though.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a big statement coming out of the Indiana Hoosiers locker room. Um, Definitely see, but I'm excited. I'm ready to see the Hoosiers play a complete game. They definitely left a lot on the field last week. Excited to see what's in the future. Hopefully open the season up 2-0, Sean. My prediction for that game, like you were saying, they left a lot of points on the board. I'm gonna go in that 45-point range for the offense. And Kennesaw State, I do think Dexter Williams is gonna score some points. I think he's gonna give it all. I'm going with 45. Let's go 17.
Pretty great prediction there. I think that'll probably be pretty close, pretty similar to my prediction. Really excited to watch this game this week. I think if the Hoosiers play with purpose and discipline, this one gets away quickly, but you've got Dexter Williams coming in. You've got a pretty decent Kennesaw State team coming off of last week. Really excited for this one once again at noon on FS1 coming from Memorial Stadium in Bloomington, Indiana. Thank you guys for watching. Looking forward to a great interview coming up this Sunday. And as always, go Hoosiers.